Carson Beck needs to get his ish together.
This is Locked On Sports Atlanta, and it's time for the Atlanta Football Party, only on Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Atlanta Football Party, your home for the best Georgia Bulldogs football talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tanisha Batiste. Alongside me are Jarvis Davis and Brian Gephardt. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a three-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. The Atlanta Football Party is also part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So guys, the Dogs got a scare in Lexington Saturday. We'll discuss how the defense helped them to escape doom, and we'll have to send more help to get a W in Tuscaloosa next Saturday. And we'll talk about what we need to see more of and less of in a couple of key areas. But first, let's just talk about that subpar performance that almost cost the Dogs big Saturday. Now, let's just be real, Jarvis. Carson Beck got off to another slow start Saturday. Now, some want to put most of the blame on Mike Bobo's play calling, but for you, is that fair? Or do you feel like more of the blame maybe lies at the feet of QB1?
Yeah, it has to be QB1 for me because we're not talking about a freshman quarterback in his first couple of starts, in his first SEC start. We're talking about a guy who's been around for quite some time. We're talking about a guy in Carson Beck that was projected to be the number one. Did I just prophesy? Oh, was? Is his draft stock going down? Yeah, so that's kind of where I am right now. I have to lay it at the feet of the quarterback because when you getting opportunities to throw the football, to get in rhythm, and you just weren't able to take advantage of, that throw to Dylan Bell just stands out to in my mind. I'm just like, oh my gosh, dude, what are you doing? Mike Bobo dialed it up perfectly for you. You had the one-on-one coverage. The man had him beat. All you got to do is lay it up there and for him to go get it, and it's a touchdown. So, and I just think that he just missed it, and I think it's been a lot of lackadaisical things going on. We talked about this on the postcast, T. I was tweeting out during the game. I like, did this man take a shot of NyQuil before the game? So yeah, I have to lay it at the feet of the guy who had high expectations coming in, being projected to be one of the better quarterbacks in not only in the SEC but in the NFL draft as a prospect coming out in 2025. Yeah, man, this is on you. You got to get your mind and your thoughts together, as my dad would say.
Right. I think that's an excellent point because if you're thinking about it from the perspective of Carson Beck not doing what Carson Beck needed to do, when you look at that first series, you go 1st and 10, Trevor Etienne gets you a couple yards, then he gets you a couple more yards that move the chains, right? But then Carson Beck passes incomplete to Dylan Bell. Granted, he ran a couple yards, but what do we get next? Carson Beck, incomplete pass to Oscar Delp, and there the ball goes back to Kentucky. So you could make a valid point to JD's point that the thing we talked about the week before and even the week before that was you got to get Carson Beck going early and often, give him some opportunities. Well, you had the opportunities and you didn't deliver. But for you, is it more Carson Beck? Is it more Mike Bobo?
So Jarvis mentioned maybe NyQuil before the game for Carson Beck. My theory is I think everybody was on the Bourbon Trail. I think Beck was there. I think Bobo was there. I think the Kentucky fans were there. The refs were there. What a sloppy, choppy, awful game to watch. Like if you didn't have a dog or a cat in the fight, so to speak, like it was one of those where you're just like, man, we are sludging through this whole thing the entire time. I think it's a combination. I'm going to take the cop-out answer here because I'll be the first one I'll be part of the group that's like blame Bobo, but there was plenty of times where Beck had opportunities to make plays and he didn't. And then there were times that he had clean pockets and no one was open. So you had this combination of guys not being able to separate. Maybe it wasn't the play, a little bit of the play calling. I think the one thing with the play calling front is that the run game wasn't necessarily working at certain times.
Yeah.
And it was getting out of rhythm, right? So Carson Beck was put in 3rd and long. And this team last year was the best team on 3rd down in the country. And now you line up on 3rd. If it's 3rd and 5 plus, I've got zero confidence in Georgia being able to do that right now. And part of that goes to, all right, who's that go-to guy, which is something I know we talked about a ton because there's still that spot of, okay, it's 3rd and 6. who's the ball going to? And it's always good to have that on offense where it might be one or two guys. And right now you have no idea who it was. One thing I would have liked to have seen early on just to get Beck in rhythm, like we say, get him going. There were these forced targets in the first couple games to Arian Smith, like on these quick little outs, and just get him the ball and get him going. And I thought at certain points, like, where is that? Because it felt that was there in the first couple games, and it's like, and all that is an extension of the run game, which wasn't working. So maybe spread out the defense a little bit more. Everything was trying to be east and west anyways. So I thought that they could have got Arian Smith or someone like that the ball a little bit more. So it was a combination of everything, but collectively, I think from start to finish, this is the worst game I've seen Carson Beck play.
Yeah, it was not a good game. And like you said, the third down efficiency definitely was a head scratcher, just 5 of 13 on third down for the Dogs on Saturday. And interestingly enough, I kind of used something similar to you guys' bourbon analogy, you guys' NyQuil analogy. Mine was sleepwalking, right?
Yeah, right.
But David Pollack, the Georgia great, had maybe a different theory. He tweeted, quote, "I see a lot of really good players on offense, but I don't see a lot of great." And for me, not taking anything away from Kentucky's defense, by the way, but at times, like you guys, I kind of felt like the Georgia offense was maybe sleepwalking through that game, especially in the first half. So for you, Brian, do you think it's more because there's no real greatness on that side of the ball? There's greatness on offense, but it hasn't shown up yet this season? Or maybe it was just a case of them playing down to who they thought their competition was in Kentucky?
I think there's some truth to that tweet a little bit. I mean, some of it's supposed to be these guys on the offensive line who did not play particularly well. And really, I mean, they're the ones that I think were the biggest disappointment heading into this game. I mean, the physicality, Kentucky won. They really controlled this game. They controlled time of possession and all of that. The one guy who I think right now is great on offense, and I know we're going to talk about him a little bit more in the show, is ETN. And you saw him start to get going and bust a few. I mean, you had the early run, right? And then you had late in the third quarter, beginning of the fourth quarter, he really started to get fed and really started to open up. And I think he's the guy that I want to see when it's 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5. Figure out a way to get ETN the ball because he's the one right now. And I think for Beck's point, he's still trying to figure out who that is in the passing game. Is it Dylan Bell? Is it Colby Young? I'd like to see some more back shoulder throws to him. Dom Lovett made some big plays down the stretch, but again, it's that, okay, I'm not sure. I'm probably going to go through what I need to do and go through all my progressions and try to make the play. But it's also nice when it was 3rd and 3 last year and you're like, all right, Brock's getting the ball. There's going to be a first down. I'm just going to kind of move the chains and keep it going. And you don't have that luxury this season.
Yeah.
And to your point, BG, when you think about that being disappointing offensive line, right? Because this is the biggest, the most experienced group, coming back to this offense and outside of the quarterback. So you have all those guys coming back, and you only had, you had Jared stepping in, for Cedric Van Pran Granger. It just made all the sense in the world that when you go on the road, when you're in these situations, you can count on that veteran group because those guys have been there, done that. So, and you just didn't see that. And one thing that I'm not used to seeing is a guy like Ernest Green. He literally got subbed out for Monroe Freeland. And it wasn't because they were rotating. It was because he was getting his behind handled, So, and when you think, that's why I feel like you have to give Kentucky's defensive line some credit because those guys they came to play and they continue to expose, like you said, guys like Green and, Michael Moore's had his struggles from time to time. So when you think about it from that aspect of it, those are some of the things that kind of go into that disappointment, kind of go into QB1 not necessarily looking like himself. But I think it's just a combination of all those things and being on the road against a team who you normally match up pretty well from a physicality standpoint. So yeah, I think it was just a snowball effect up there in Lexington, and I think that those guys got to be held accountable for it.
Yeah. You mentioned Jared Wilson taking over for Van Pran. I mean, that's his first true road start, which is a difference maker when you're a center and you're helping with protection and communication and all that type of thing. And he had 2 bad snaps in this game. I thought Beck should have picked him up on one of those snaps. It was in a spot where he probably should have been able to grab that for him. But those 2 snaps were very close to being one of those things that was the difference in a win and a loss. So that's something to keep an eye on moving forward. And guess what? In 2 weeks in Tuscaloosa, that thing's only going to be louder and more ramped up because the Crimson Tide are rolling and their crowd's going to be ready to roll. But the Kentucky crowd was really impressive too on Saturday night. And they kind of grew in confidence and they got really loud as it got into that second half. So they were impressive on Saturday.
And you kind of hope in a situation like to you guys' point with Jarrett Wilson, maybe this was the thing where, hey, get all of that kind of out of your system in terms of the hostile environment on the road and you having to deal with that and kind of being responsible for kind of, solidifying everything on the O-line and keeping things going, keeping things on rhythm and not making that type of mistake. Well, you got 2 weeks to kind of clean up whatever it was that didn't go so well, whatever that continuity was that just wasn't there for not just Jarrett Wilson, but to your earlier point, Jarvis, for that entirety of the Dogs O-line. Now, like we said, Dogs got a little bit of a scare in Lexington, but the defense definitely helped to bail them out, and they're going to have to send more help in Tuscaloosa if they want to get a W. We'll go between the hedges to discuss. This episode of our Atlanta Football Party is brought to you by Roy. So, Dogs fans, have you heard about Roy? It stands for Return on You, and it's a new platform that lets you, the fans, get involved in NIL like never before by making contributions directly to your favorite athletes. By supporting players directly, you can help shape rosters, retain talent, and keep your favorite athletes out of the transfer portal. As you all know, NIL has definitely changed the game for athletes, and Roy, or Return on You, changes the NIL game for fans. So here's why Roy is different. You can directly support the players. It allows fans to directly back their favorite college athletes. So you can play a key role in shaping the future of your favorite teams while athletes are maximizing their NIL potential. And also you can engage with athletes on their NIL journey. By using Roy, fans not only support athletes financially, but also become part of the name, image, and likeness journey by helping them succeed both on and off the field. So download ROY for iOS or Android and enter the referral code Locked On, and you'll automatically be entered into a sweepstakes to win $5,000 cash. Again, visit roy.com for additional details. No purchase is necessary. It's void where prohibited, but you can start making an impact on your favorite team today. So, BG, we always have our Michael moments, and we promise they're coming back soon because we're hopeful that Michael Williams will come back soon as well. But real talk, we got to have a moment that we'll now call the Walker wins, because Jalen Walker, oh my goodness, had definitely the play of the game, but it may be one of those that comes back to end up being the play of the year, right? And it was just a joy to see, because it was one of those games where you kind of needed those big play situations that we saw with Jalen Walker on Saturday, just for Georgia, for lack of a better term, to kind of keep themselves in the mix. But how important, and I'll say not just for this game, obviously for that play, but how important has Jalen Walker really been to the success of the Dogs and for the success of this defense overall so far this season?
I thought he was the best player on the field on Saturday night, especially from a Georgia perspective. He was spectacular. It affected this game in a lot of different ways. It was one of those ones where you might pull up the box score and go, oh, he didn't really like fill it up necessarily. The man had 8 pressures, and one of those calls, roughing the passer, which was just ridiculous. Like, and everyone was one of those ones, like,
that was boo-boo.
Are we playing football? Are we not playing football? This is not flag football on ABC. Like, this is regular football on ABC. So that was very frustrating. And he needed to step up with Brinson out and with Michael out. And so far through the first couple weeks, what we've seen from Jalen Walker has been what we thought we were going to see from Michael Williams. And part of that, obviously, is the injury to Michael Williams. So you hope that now you have Walker on one side and Michael on the other when they go to Alabama, and all that's going to do is just add confidence. But they needed it, because this wound up being one of those games where it was like, okay, you're really going to test this depth that Kirby always preaches about. And that Kentucky offensive line was bringing it, and they were going to try to run it down your throat. And they were pretty good at doing that all game long. But what Walker was able to bring to the table should provide a lot of confidence for the defense and the pass rush for this team moving forward, especially when Michael comes back.
Indeed, indeed. And for you, Jarvis, what did you see out of Jalen Walker? And like Brian said, the box score may not tell, it doesn't necessarily tell all the story without recording maybe, that sack or that tackle for loss per se. But everything that this guy did, it was one of those where you just needed to see where was Walker, because you knew wherever you saw him on the field, there was going to be an impactful play in that game.
I was about to say he's a secret weapon, but Glenn Schumann, the secret bro. Everybody know this man is good, and they're gonna be looking for to see where 11 is lined up before
Yeah.
the snap. That's how you know the impact or the effect that he's having on the game. Okay, is he gonna line up on the outside on the edge over the tackle, or is he standing up in the middle? Because I think one of the things that I felt like was debilitating for this Georgia defense. Now, granted, you know, it kicked a whole bunch of field goals again, but I think that when Kentucky was able to move the football, they were having success turning around and handing it off, and Brock Vandagriff was getting out of the pocket and scrambling. You know,
Yeah.
that was something that kind of, you know, was a thorn in their side. So when it came down toward the end of the game and Brock had to throw the football, all you saw was Levin up in there standing up in that line of scrimmage, and they made them adjustments from the first half to the second half too.
Mm-hmm.
And you just saw him stand up in the line of scrimmage. And wherever Brock went, and as soon as he act like he was about to get ready to break outside of that pocket, Jalen Walker was like a heat-seeking missile. Gonna take it off to go get that dude. But yeah, it was really good to see how Glenn Schumann was able to utilize and maximize Jalen Walker's versatility, because a lot of times, you know, people we talking about when you could do a lot of things, they're not necessarily great at a lot of things, great at anything.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see that. I'm talking about this man was lining up outside on the edge, rushing the passer, boom, I can do that. Stand up linebacker, boom, I can do that. If you're getting outside the pocket, I'm coming to get you, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, yeah. And another guy that it seemed like Kentucky didn't have an answer for, and you hope that Alabama doesn't have an answer for either, is Ty Ingram Dawkins, who was named SEC Co-Defensive Lineman of the Week for Week 3 this season. The SEC, of course, announced that Monday. He recorded 3 tackles, a couple tackles for loss, and a sack in that win over Kentucky. But how important has his play been this season? How pivotal was it last week? And of course, how pivotal will it be come next week when the Dogs have to travel to Tuscaloosa?
When you think about what we talked about at start the segment, we talked about Brinson being coming in this season, he's a vet guy that I feel like there are some expectation level right there, because Brinson has always been a guy that kind of stood out to me in his years at Georgia. It's just a guy who can get you some TFLs, and a guy who can be disruptive. So when that's not out there, you got to turn to someone, and that someone and that person has been Ty Dawkins. Dawkins has been that guy just from that defensive end spot that, you know, that Georgia needs, because we know that Michael had moved from that spot to the outside linebacker spot, so he can have more opportunities to be able to, you know, rush the passer, because we understand what time it is. Hey, man, it's money year. It's you know, 2025 draft is going to be very important for Mr. Williams. So I think that when you think of what Ingram and Dawkins bring to the table, that is the guy that you need to be able to step into that role that Michael Williams once used to fill. And then we got guys like Brinson not being out there. You needed that defensive line, you know, to start establishing themselves. And I think Ty Dawkins has definitely done that this year. And, you know, like I said, he's raising those expectations, and I'm sure he'll be able to meet them as long as he's able to stay healthy.
Yeah, this is one of those guys that it's like a luxury item to have, right? In the sense of, okay, guys are out, here we go. And he comes in, he's SEC Defensive Player of the Week, like you mentioned. Like, just the fact that it's like, just, all right, this guy's down, come on in and you can go ahead and do this. Georgia doesn't win the game without Ingram Dawkins and the way he played there on Saturday night too. And one thing I've heard some conversations the last few days about, was the defense really as good as we thought, or did they actually win this game on Saturday because of how successful Kentucky was rushing the ball? They didn't have a play in the red zone. Like, the Kentucky offense did not get inside the red zone. So for people that were like, oh, was it the defense that really, they ran the ball all over them? Well, yeah, kind of. But also, when you can contain somebody in between the 20s, I mean, let a field goal, if he's hitting it from 40 plus and 50 plus, like, if a kicker's going to do that, you're going to give up some points here and there. But to keep him out of the end zone again with all these guys out, and the performances from Walker and Ingram Dawkins, that's something to hang on your hat moving forward and as they head into Tuscaloosa.
And speaking of that, what's the one thing you guys need to see from this Dogs defense that maybe you haven't seen quite yet, or maybe not consistently, that you need to see so that they can get that win in Tuscaloosa?
For me, it's just everybody healthy at the same time. It's just as simple as that. Like, just having everybody available who can actually play. That's the biggest thing for me, is if you can get you want the defense to have to think of, okay, where's Walker? Where's Williams? Where's Ingram Dawkins? Where's Brinson? You don't want them to only think about one or two guys that they can key in on. If there's 4 or 5 guys wreaking havoc, that's when you put yourself in a situation, if you're the other team where you're going to run into some problems.
Yeah, and for me, I look at it from the standpoint of I want to start seeing these linebackers, these second level guys. Let's get these guys involved, not only specifically in the run game, because when you got guys like Dawkins tearing it up front, Walker getting those TFLs, I want to see those linebackers come shooting no gaps. CJ Allen, Raylan Wilson, I want to see those guys start to really find their groove, because I feel like Raylan is a guy that it's something there. I feel like it's something there with him. I think he has those capabilities to be able to start shining. And I think that if those guys, I charge those guys to trying to come on to the party, come get involved, because Walker and Dawkins, and when Michael comes back, it's going to be a big party, and you can't be standing on the wall trying to figure out who you're going to try to approach about a dance. So yeah, go and get in there, go in there and get you some.
Get yourself a little two-step going on. Okay, we'll talk about what we need to see more or less of in a couple key areas in Next Up. This episode of our Atlanta Football Party is brought to you by FanDuel. Now, you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel because it's America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you now through September 22nd. All FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. With a YouTube TV base plan, you'll also be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. So again, that's now through September 22nd. So you got about 5 days left where all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. So all you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. Again, that's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Locked On Sports Today is a free 24/7 sports streaming channel that's programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the noise. Locked On Sports Today also brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, BG, after escaping with a 1-point win over Kentucky Saturday, while Texas scored 49 points, albeit over UT San Antonio, Georgia actually slipped to #2, while Texas moved up to #1 in the AP poll. But were you surprised? Was this drop warranted or not for you?
No, not surprised at all. And I actually have a lot of different thoughts on Georgia moving down to #2. Some of it's from the Texas angle. So I was doing a show over the weekend on 680, and I was talking about I'm really concerned about if Carson Beck gets hurt, right? Because I just don't like Gunnar Stockton. He played a little bit in the second half against Tennessee Tech. So when I see what Texas has as a backup, and we all knew Archman's got the last name right, have we really seen a lot from him? This guy comes in, and granted, they were playing UTSA, so it was a team that they were much better than, but touchdown on the very first pass he throws, that 67-yard run he had. Who knew a Manning could run? So now you have that whole element to it. But I
His
think
daddy's a wide receiver, BG. That's why he can run.
No, Cooper was the one with the athleticism in that family. So
he got all the athleticism.
That man from like 8 yards deep. That was the other thing that was fascinating about that. Like he set him up for sure. So the fact that Texas has that, I think is really is big and is key, because I think if you run into a situation, say Saturday night, right? If Beck was the one who goes out with an abdominal injury in the middle of that second quarter, I think Georgia loses that football game, because Beck made just enough plays in the second half and just enough throws in the second half. So I think Texas is warranted to hop up in that one spot. They've been very impressive so far. And who knows what Michigan's season winds up being, but that win at Ann Arbor, and to do that to that team and the defending national champions, was the most impressive win, I think, so far on the season for any team. So I've got no problem with them being #1. One other quick thought on that is, it's funny to hear the fan base from Georgia because Kirby's got everybody so brainwashed and everybody on board to where like, yeah, we should be number 2. He gets to preach to him for 2 weeks. And like, you hear that and you never hear Chase go like, why are we not number 1? Like, yeah, they deserve to be number 2.
Trained,
like, we were going to be the ones yelling at him in practice. Like it's just so because everybody's just parroting Kirby, it's just like, yeah, number 2, we yelled them. These guys weren't listening to the message. We'll get ready and get right for Bama. So it's just funny to hear that from the group, because usually it's the opposite way of like, oh, we're screwed. Why aren't we we haven't lost yet, so I found that very funny over the last few days.
Yeah, I think we're talking about a team from the American Conference, UTSA.
Mm-hmm.
They blew them out like they were supposed to. And we talk about the SEC and just how great it is and how it's one of the top 2 conferences in the nation, right? Mm-hmm. And they go on the road in their first SEC conference game and get a win. And Texas gets to jump them for beating an American Conference team. American. Very generic name there, SEC.
Country it's in.
Everybody know what I'm talking about when I talk about the SEC. The American Conference, a team that's been in this conference for 2 years, And I think, but I'm with you on this one, BG. I feel like a lot of this has to do with the name Arch Manning, everybody being excited. I think there's some Georgia fatigue, obviously, because, oh man, Georgia's number 1 again. Oh, and then, all the writers are, they're always looking for the storyline. They're always looking for something to be able to write about. And what more can you write about than probably one of the best last names that have ever played the quarterback position, right? As a combination of 3 people, 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks and a quarterback that played for a horrible team. And, he just did what he could when he was in the NFL in Arch Manning. So for me, I look at it from a standpoint of this is some storyline. Hey, this is going to be some really good conversation to talk about AP polls, because a lot, AP poll lost a little bit of his luster, with the college football playoff, coming around with 8, 9 or whatever. So I think this is something to talk about. But if you're asking me strictly from a football standpoint, should Texas be number 1 over Georgia? Heck no, not at all. They got to win over SEC squad, and Texas beat an American Conference football team.
But I told you Saturday night in postgame.
Yes, you did. See, you called it. You called it.
And I think that a part of it as well might be the build up, if you will, to Brian's point, because you did get a 31-12 win over Michigan, a top 10 team, and like you said, the national champions, and then you shut out Colorado State. No matter that it's Colorado State, you beat them 52-0. So I think it was one of those where I think that week Texas didn't necessarily get any first place votes. Then they got 4 first place votes. Now they're number 1. So you kind of saw it coming, because unfortunately for Georgia, as I say all the time, you're number 1 and everybody loves to knock number 1 off the perch. And for whatever reason, they're just
looking for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. They're just not the darlings. And I don't think we're biased in saying that they're not the darlings the way maybe Alabama was the darlings, were the darlings in their heyday, if you will. But like you said as well, the conversation is what this really boils down to, because we are having conversation, not so much. Do you guys know we've gotten through 28 minutes of this show talking about Texas and have never once said the words Quinn Ewers?
Yeah.
Oh, it's over for him. I tweeted it out when all the highlights were coming out and everything like that. I was like, man, Ewers better figure out a way to be Arch Manning's agent, because bruh, if you look, even Steve Sarkisian was like, oh yeah, he's week to week. Yeah, I bet he is week to week.
Do you really think Arch? I mean, I know Arch he's gonna start the next game or 2 for them for sure. Do you really think do you think he takes the job from him? Do you really think that happens?
Wouldn't be shocked.
And look, I mean,
yeah.
What you think?
Yeah.
I think Ewers comes back. I think Ewers comes back as a starter as soon as he's
don't get me wrong. I'm playing it up a little bit, but from a talent standpoint, and just for him to immediately come in and do what he did.
It was a touchdown. Your first.
Right. I know it's an American conference. I've been ragging on the American conference for the past 5 or 6 minutes, but man, it's something when the quarterback comes in and immediately has that chemistry, immediately comes in and throws the football and put the ball where it needs to be. It just lets me know that he's ready. So Quinn Ewers, take your time, bro.
Yeah.
Don't need to rush back. It's a long season. We need you to be ready for the playoff. Man, if I'm Sarkisian, I'm massaging that bad boy on up. Yeah, don't worry about your job. Gonna be all right. I'm just looking at and meanwhile, Sarkisian saying to himself, "Man, I'm about to have a job for the next 3-4 years, bro. I'm guaranteed. Look, my contract just got guaranteed as soon as my Arch made it through that ball in the end zone."
And then when he saw him scramble, he really got big eyes and got excited, right?
Yeah.
All the way. Yeah. It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. But yeah, Quinn Ewers, note to self: you don't want to be Drew Bledsoe. It did end well for him. We hope it wins, for your sake.
Don't disappear.
Hopefully
stay relevant, bro.
Yeah.
Hold that clipboard at practice, bro. I'm talking about.
Imagine if Arch takes over and then Quinn Ewers still goes top 5 in the draft, because that's a scenario that exists in this world. So that would be crazy. Yeah.
It could absolutely happen. Real quick before we wrap up, I know, BG, we talked about Trevor Etienne a little bit earlier in the game and how when he got the ball, especially late, when you look at the last part of the third quarter, the beginning of the fourth quarter, and the only touchdown of the day, he was so critical for that particular drive. But what do you guys think should be the winning formula for ball distribution in that running back room, especially against Alabama?
I just got to see more Etienne, and he wound up with 20 total touches. They realized in the game, okay, we should really start to feed him. But in that spot, when exactly, and it's fresh legs too, right? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like he just got the one game against Tennessee Tech where he didn't have to play. Like there's not a lot there so far in terms of wear and tear. So like give him the ball. But I think if your offense is struggling and you're just trying to find a way to move, like get him the ball, whether that's through the air or if it's a handoff or whatever it might be. And that really got the offense going in the second half. Branson Robinson had that nice touchdown run, but he still isn't quite there yet. It looks in that way. So it's okay moving forward, especially against Bama. Like it's okay if it's 75% ETN and then the other guys are sprinkled in. And if it's working and you get up a couple scores, sure, mix those other guys in. But ETN, I think I want to see it more early and often. We saw it in the second half, but earlier coming up in the next few games.
How about you, Jarvis?
Figure out a way to get Kobe Young the ball between the 20s, please. Thank you. That's it. That's all I got. Come on, man. Let's do it.
Reply.
Right.
In the run game, and we also know what we want to see more of in the passing game. Thanks to our everydayers for making the Atlanta Football Party your first listen of the day. Be sure to stop by Locked On Bulldogs for your second listen, and be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're also free and available wherever you download your podcasts. We'll see you on the Atlanta Sports Party Thursday.